Hi, my name is Stephanie Caballero, and I am the founder of the Surrogacy Law Center and IVF Parent Podcast, as well as this webinar, Repro Law Roundup. I guess I'll give it a few more minutes. It is June, the beginning of summer. So, for you that are attending, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I love doing this. I love talking to you guys. If you have any questions, you want to see something different, you can always reach out to me. Oh, I better silence my phone. Seriously, right? There you go. Silenced now so that I don't get interrupted because sometimes I forget and I get interrupted. Anyways, I guess we'll get started since it's just 10 o'clock. Okay, well, 10:01 now. So we've given people enough time and they can just join later, hop in, hop off, whatever. I do tape this. It's on YouTube, Instagram, the website. So you can definitely find it if you need to watch later. Anyways, we're going to get right into it. I don't know if you're aware of the Mark Surrogacy case. This was something that came to light last year. Awful case. Owners of an agency, Mark Surrogacy, really did dupe, over 20 surrogates into caring for them. They had no idea that they had so many children. I think they have a total of 27 or more, but there were 20 children that were involved when this came to light. And the authorities in Los Angeles, it's a house in Arcadia, which is in Los Angeles County, raided the house. There was a baby that had actually gone to the hospital with severe injuries. And so they raided the house, they took the children. It was really horrific and shocking. I was not involved in one of the cases, and at all, not any of them. Um, but some of the attorneys were, they had no idea. The attorney who drafted for them did, and some of the other attorneys did, and not good at all. Anyways, so the authorities in Los Angeles decided to completely bypass family reunification. I know I was reading an article and the children were not comfortable with them. They were very much more comfortable with their caregivers, but when their legal parents, the owners of Mark Surrogacy, would come to see them, the children would get quiet. They would lose their animation. So I think that's one reason why they bypassed family reunification. And so they have decided not to give the children to the parents. They are going to be with their guardians or with adoptive parents. So that's good news for those children. Unfortunately, for Mark Surrogacy, I don't think they're in operation. There was an article that said that the parents do have other surrogates. So hopefully that will stop. In the meantime, our industry is looking at ways of preventing this. And I know there's a new organization. Full disclosure, I am on the advisory board. It's called Surrostudy. We do know for you agencies, if you're working in Texas, there are courts in Texas that are requiring additional information for parents because the Texas was involved in one of the Mark Surrogacy cases, and they are pissed. As they should be, right? So they are requiring more information. And so this company was created to really work with surrogates and intended parents and take that kind of level instead of an adoption level. Adoption is different. You are placing a child that somebody had thought that perhaps they could be theirs into another home, whereas surrogacy parents are actually creating their child, and the surrogate is not carrying her own child. So it's a different model. So this Surrostudy has been accepted in the courts. So that's something that those in the industry are looking at to help protect our industry. We don't want to be gatekeepers, but we do want to help the courts understand that these are people. And these people really want their children and they've worked very hard for them. Unfortunately, in Mark Surrogacy, they said they just, the father just wanted a million children for some reason. Okay, not a million, but 20, 27. Elon Musk wants like 15 plus, and there's that guy who owns Telegram who wants how many children. This case, though, should never have happened. And unfortunately, it did. And now we're taking steps in the industry to help protect those involved, and so it doesn't happen again. And with that said, Representative Scott Perry now has, oh my gosh, the name of this proposed law, Protecting Kids from Creeps Act. I think we could have named it something better, but I think it's a good thing. He did do the law in Florida that I talked about last month, where those from China and other countries cannot work with surrogates in the state of Florida. And I think he's hoping to do that nationwide. I don't know how that will work. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. However, this one has been introduced, and it's going to prevent people who have. There was a guy in, for lack of a better word, Pennsylvania, who was, I think, a convicted or suspected child sex offender, and he had a baby via surrogacy. There was no background check done. So I was surprised that a lot of agencies don't do background checks on intended parents. I'm licensed in California as well as other states like Texas. And California has requested background checks on intended parents for years, right? Years. Of course, Mark Surrogacy came out of California as well as other states, but that's why there's like zero study and other things. And that would have helped prevent Mark Surrogacy, just saying. Again, we don't want to be gatekeepers, but we don't want pedophiles and we don't want to mark surrogacy. So, yes, requesting a background check and using really good companies that will do a thorough job over the intended parents is not a bad thing. Surrogates have always had a background check. And at the end of the day, those poor surrogates from Merck Surrogacy on this case, they're devastated because when you're a surrogate, you're doing this because you want to help somebody have a family of their own. My surrogate, she thinks about my children and what a wonderful gift she gave me. Okay, it was hard work. And yes, I did pay her because hello, carrying twins, carrying any baby is growing a human in your body is hard work. I have not really done that, but I work with surrogates and I see what they go through. Hard work. Hats off to you. Amazing, right? And so these anomalies, and they don't, I'm sorry, I don't really say that word very well, but they don't really happen very often, right? But if they do, then we need to take steps to prevent that. I love our industry, and for the most part, these people very much want their children. They're not a Mark Surrogacy, they're not this guy in Pennsylvania, right? But let's do background checks on everybody at the end of the day, right? The surrogate needs to know that this is a good person, right? So not so against this, right? So we'll see how it goes and where it goes, right? Oh my gosh. There's this maxing trend on the internet, social media. There was this young guy who was like maxing out his body and, his BMI and all the things. And oh my gosh, the tech bros do it all the time. They want to live forever and put their bodies on ice. And there's maxing everything, right? So now there's something called sperm maxing. Oh my gosh, so funny. I love that name. Anyways, because really and truly, seriously, sperm counts have been going down for years. I think, nutritionally, especially in the United States, people don't have really access to a lot of great food here. We don't eat typically fresh and in season. We can have strawberries year round. When I go to like Italy, oh my gosh, it's artichoke season, it's squash blossom season. And, we don't have seasons like that. And we kind of should actually, because we'd have better food. Anyways, and then there's hot tubs and things, and smoking isn't good for sperm. Marijuana use, vaping is not good for sperm. So really and truly, yes, it's sperm maxing, but it's just diet, exercise, staying out of hot tubs, stop smoking, things like that. So the physicians are like, great that you're talking about sperm and how to improve it, but sperm maxing, because then they'll say, oh, you should take this and you should take that, and that'll help your sperm. And then that's just snake oil. That's just like, it's not proven. It's somebody to get rich quick. So, anyways, it's a good idea that we're focusing on sperm and sperm health. But let's just, do what is typical of anybody to stay healthy. Work out, eat a sensible diet, 90% of the time, do good, 10%, have a little fun, right? Because who doesn't like a little fun now and then? All right. All right. Staying in the surrogacy space, there's a lot of private equity in this space. Private equity is about the IVF centers. There's one agency group that is owned by private equity. And private equity can be a good thing. In this case, I think it's one of the reasons why the cost of surrogacy has become so high. Um, just a hunch, but I don't know. The cost of everything has gone up since the pandemic. So previously, before the pandemic, you could get away with a surrogacy if you did it, independently, or you chose an agency, that didn't charge a lot. You could really actually get away with, like, probably they say 100, but more like $125,000. And now it's $200,000. So the cost has really gone up substantially. And then there are these other agencies, and some of them are great. I work with them. Fantastic agencies. I'm not gonna lie. They are expensive, but they do an amazing job. But now there's one agency, and this agency is charging $600,000. So that's the newest in agency world. I don't know if it's worth it. It's brand new. So we'll see how it goes. But at that cost, very few people will be able to do it. But for those who can, and they want to utilize that, then we'll see how that goes. But yeah, so private equity has gone in, and they see it as a rapid growth area. I'm not so sure how rapid growth it's going to be, but let's see how that agency goes. It's in New York. I don't know the name of it, but it's brand new. So, and then staying in New York. Okay, so there was something I kept seeing on the web, and I get these alerts, and it says, "Oh my gosh, New York has gotten rid of the word mother and father in their state family court act," and it's the act that they wrapped in together, and they legalized surrogacy in New York. It was illegal for many, many years. And so I did a deep dive, and no, they didn't make the name mother and father illegal, and you can't use that on your birth certificate. What they did is they just made the language gender neutral. We used to talk about paternity, but hello, there's maternity. So why don't we just say parentage? And the birth certificates in California 20 years ago just had mother, father. And then we realized that, wow, there's two women, two men, we can do three people, we can do, single mother, single father, right? And when I started, my poor guys, they were even a single guy, they had to be the mother on the birth certificate. So California did years ago what New York is doing now. And New York is saying that you can be a parent, you can be a mother, you can be a father, whatever you want, father, father. So they've just made it gender neutral. They talk about paternity and gestating parent and non-gestating parent and parentage. So no, they are not outlawing the name and the use of mother and father. They are just expanding it to include all sorts of different families. Love is love, right? So there you go. All right, moving on to Canada and our friendly neighbors from the north, Saskatchewan. Oh my gosh, I said that. That's really a kind of a hard word to say. I'm not going to lie. Fabulous what they're doing. They're giving a 50% refundable tax credit to offset fertility costs. We all know that fertility costs are expensive. California, just for large group, has insurance that covers IVF, which is great. Oh, sorry, got a little tickle in my throat. IVF, which is great. I was thinking about moving to another state when I was doing my IVF because there was no insurance available to me, and I worked for a large group company at the time. Could have had insurance, but I didn't. Oh well. Anyway, so that's great that they did it. They're doing it, but it's just for straight IVF. So they excluded egg donation, and older women sometimes need an egg donor because, they are starting to have children at an older age, and your eggs usually are not as good at 20. Well, they're really not, but sometimes you can use them when you're older, but typically you cannot. Anyways, so they forgot about egg donors and they forgot about sperm donors. So if you need a sperm donor, or you need an egg donor, you don't get the tax credit. So they're saying now, those people who are cut out of the tax credit, that it is a financial barrier. It impacts same-sex couples. It even impacts opposite-sex couples. So, right? If sometimes opposite-sex couples need a sperm donor. So, Canada, thank you for the 50% tax credit in Saskatchewan, but it needed to be more robust and include more people, right? So, because you know what they have to do in Canada, they import the sperm from the United States, and that costs like 16 grand. So, they're going to take a look at it. They want it to apply consistently across, all realms. So hopefully that'll work, but good for them for doing it. Okay. Right. All right, now we're going to go to artificial intelligence and robotics. We all know about AI. Seems like there's an article about AI every day, and it's been a really big help. I got to tell you, when I need a little help in my garden, hey, how should I do this? Picture pops up, magical, right? Well, former national health surgeon out of the UK is looking to leverage AI. Sorry, I know my kids always say don't use AI so much. Water use, waste, and electricity, and those are scarce resources. But in this case, it might be good, right? And robotics, right? Because they want to challenge the high IVF cost. That IVF is so expensive. In the United States, it's like $35,000 to $50,000. That's a lot of money, right? So if they can reduce the cost of IVF by using robotics, finding it more reliable, finding it cheaper. I know AI is best at picking out embryos. I've heard that. So, using AI assistants because they'll see things that the naked eye cannot. So that could be a good thing. So, anyways, we'll keep up on that. But if they reduce the cost, then more people can use IVF. It can be accessed by more people, and we can have more babies. What's not to like about a baby, right? So, we'll see about that. Oh, and now moving on to San Diego and my neck of the woods because I am in San Diego. There are researchers from San Diego, not just San Diego, all right? It's also Oxford and Stanford that have a wearable patch. So you can have continuous hands-free fetal monitoring. I don't know though. I mean, it's a good thing, but gosh, I mean, 24/7? I guess so, because you don't really know what's going on, right? Until you get your ultrasound, you get your fetal heartbeat. I mean, you can feel the baby, but the device really has helped. It measures fetal head circumference, limb length, and those are all indicators of health of the baby, right? Your head size when you're in the womb and your limb length, as well as blood flow. So, and you don't need a trained sonographer. You don't need to have, the ultrasound done. And they had 62 pregnancies, and the patch performed just on par with traditional ultrasound machines. So, and it did successfully identify a dangerous shift in blood flow. And the doctors were able to intervene and deliver the baby via C-section. So that's amazing. On the downside of it, it's you have, I guess, this bulky power system and it limits, they say, heavy maternal movement. So what does that mean? Can you walk? Can you pick up your other children, go to the park? Can you sleep? I mean, I think they're going to need to improve it and make it smaller and more manageable for the pregnant woman who's carrying it. Because heavy maternal movement, as an attorney, I'm like, I want a definition. What does that mean? But anyways, that's really great. If you have a high risk pregnancy, that would be an amazing thing to do, right? So we'll keep track on that and see how that goes, right, in this space. in New York. There was another couple fighting over the embryos. Really and truly, we've just had this case in California where they awarded the embryos to the ex-wife. And this still continues. How many years? Over 40 years of IVF. This still continues to be a battle. Seems like every month, every other month, there is an IVF embryo dispute case. This was out of New York. Woman was 47. They call her a high-powered lawyer. She's just a very successful attorney. She happens to be a female. Anyways, went through IVF, couple broke up, battling, went to court, went to court. She, for a short period of time, they said, yes, this is her last chance to have a child with her own genetics. So they did the balancing test, right? They looked at all the things, but some courts, some states do the balancing test. In California, they look at the consent forms and they liken that to a contract. And so they said yes. They initially, the civil court said yes. They awarded it to the wife because age-related urgency. I think she's now 47. And she went through IVF. And in between the time that that court granted her the embryos, the husband appealed, and the appellate court said no, and they halted the ruling. But in between that window, she went through IVF and she got pregnant. So it is an unsettled area of law. So I don't really think the surrogacy statutes are unsettled. I think our surrogacy statutes in almost every state are pretty settled, but this area is unsettled. In most of the cases, the court doesn't take into consideration there is going to be a child born. What are you going to do about that other parent? Does the other parent want to be involved? Typically not. That's why they are not wanting you to utilize the embryos. But now you've created a child. So is that child going to have access to that other parent? Is the child going to get child support from that other parent? Visitation? Is that person going to be considered a parent, right? In some states, they've said, okay, you can do this, but that other person is not a parent if they don't want to be a parent, right? But then you have a child who knows that somebody else created them, but you split up, they didn't want to be involved, right? So how do you handle that, right? I'm not a mental health professional, but there's all these issues that the court doesn't take into consideration, and they should. Really and truly, what I think should happen, I know when I was going through IVF, you go there to have a baby. You've been trying to have a baby for years. And I get these forms and I look at them and I'm like, what do I want to have done if I die? If I get divorced? I'm like, I don't know. I'm going here to do IVF to get some embryos to hopefully have a baby, right? Or two, right? Or how many you want. I'm not there to talk about that. So really and truly, you should meet with a reproductive attorney, and a reproductive attorney would talk to you about these ramifications. Because at the end of the day, a lot of times you say, sure, honey, I don't care what you do. Do you want them? But then you break up and then you're like, why did I say that? I don't want this person to have them. I'm not married to them. I don't want to have to be responsible for a child with this person I'm not married to or I'm not together with, because some people don't get married, right? So we need to discuss this and we need to do something differently because I don't think this is working, right? So, anyways, more on that later. I'm sure we'll have more cases, but it's being talked about at Seeds. Actually, there's a brown bag on it. So, if you can join, it's a Society for Ethics and Egg Donation and Surrogacy. I think it's today at noon, but you'll get some really good information. Amira Hasselbush and Deborah Wald are the attorneys, great attorneys involved. So check that out because really and truly we need to do something about that. Oh my gosh. So sperm donation. We talked about sperm maxing. So sperm, like I said, is expensive. Look, you get it from the United States and you're in Canada, it's $16,000 for sperm. I know, right? Sperm is really easy to get. Eggs, not so much. Have to have medical procedures, lots of shots. We all know how easy sperm is to get. But frozen sperm is $16,000. I really should take a deep dive and find out why that's so expensive, but that is another topic. Anyways, because it costs so much money for these women and these couples and these individuals, they're going online to Facebook groups. I know lots of people are in Facebook groups to find a surrogate, and it can work out really well for you. And you can also get preyed upon. A lot of men on these forums want to do natural sperm donation, which is meaning they want to have sex with you. Women, that is not sperm donation. That's making him a daddy. So, and then also they're getting into situations where there's sexual assault. So there's very, very, very real harm. So I would say for these women to please be very careful about this. Background checks and things like that. There's other things to do. This came out of the UK, and the UK is very concerned about this. It's really become an issue, and women are getting preyed upon. I've seen a couple articles about this. So there is a warning about these groups, and they've actually gone out to Facebook, to Meta, because, well, of course, Meta has failed to engage or inform the police about these illicit forums. So that's one thing. Not surprised. So really, buyer beware. There's got to be a better way for sperm, but um, this is not it for sure. So, if it's worked for you, just be very, very, very careful and do a very thorough and complete background check for sure. Right? Okay, that was in the UK, but that can happen anywhere. But I have some good news out of Italy, even though they banned surrogacy for any Italian, no matter where the Italian is situated in the world. So, boo. I had a lot of Italian clients and I helped create so many families, my little small part. So, and they have a really low fertility rate. So, I'm very sad to see this happen with, sorry, I'm going to turn off my phone because, geez, oh, Lou, getting a lot of little beeps on it. It's distracting me. Anyways, back to Italy. They recognize three parents. Seriously, Italy, where the Pope, who's from the US, yay! Kind of love Pope Leo. He's amazing on X. You should go check him out on Twitter. Fabulous. Anyways, so they recognize three parents. This is the story. They were married fathers, so two daddies, and the woman who utilized her eggs to help them have a child. Child's 4 years old. Sorry, I do that all the time. Child's 4 years old, born in Germany, and biological of one of the men with the female friend. I'm sure she carried. And one of the daddies is German and Italian. So they adopted the child in Germany under German law. So they both became the parents. But they also wanted the child to have Italian citizenship. And at first, the court in Italy rejected it. They said, this is surrogacy. Oh, gosh. Surrogacy is not perfect, but if all my families in Italy could stand up, if you could see all the babies, if you could see the love that we've done in Italy, anyways, I digress. The court overturned that and said, yes, no surrogacy. And the final ruling said that, yes, they're going to align with Germany. So they put three parents on the birth certificate, and they're all three parents under German, I mean, not German law, well, German law too, but Italian law. So amazing. Yeah, so thank you, Italy. Now, if only you can, reverse the surrogacy. I don't think that's going to happen for a very long time. So, dear. All right, this is kind of a narrow thing, but I found it so fascinating and so interesting. So there was a Marquess and Marchioness, don't know how to say that word, not gonna lie. Anyways, so they did a surrogacy, royal couple did a surrogacy. Their little boy is 9 years old, and of course, in the UK, it doesn't matter if you get a parentage order. I work with a lot of couples out of the UK. I have to get a parentage order for the most part here, but you also have to get a parentage order in the UK. They don't recognize any other parentage order. But this couple also had to do something different at the High Court because they have intestacy laws that are based off of the monarchy. I don't know what it's called. Oh, it's under the Act of Settlement. So it's royal heirs. So it's ascendancy for heirs, sort of like the royal family. I'm sure they have the same thing. Wow, what if somebody in the royal family had to use a surrogate? Work with a surrogate. I hate to say use, it's the wrong word because you really do work with a surrogate. Yeah, so sorry for saying use. Anyways, because I think language does matter. Anyways, royal heirs must be heirs of the body. Obviously, this woman did not carry. She could not carry. She had a surrogate carry her child. And so they had to go to high court. to not get that law changed, but to get him recognized. And the High Court said, of course, he should be recognized. He should be treated as any other child, and he should be looked at as the rest of his siblings. And so now he is in the line of succession. So that's actually good news, right? Everybody has their own story, and that is very unique because not a lot of royalty work with surrogates, but more than you think, though. And so that's good that their child and their children will be looked at in the line of succession for sure. So great. All right, so there's a lot of news about space, right? Um, there's the IPO on SpaceX. I think that's like wrapped in with Tesla and all the things that Elon Musk has. And, he's talked about going to Mars and the moon and things like that. China actually has conducted the first space experiment using an artificial embryo. It was, from human stem cells, right? So that's how they did it because they want to know about microgravity and how that affects human development. And they also want to know how that would affect fertility. I'm not sure how space would work for human fertility, pregnancy rates, with zero gravity. Not being a scientist, but that's what they want to work on because, of course, obviously, the hope is like Elon and for most people, colonize Mars, moon. Oh my gosh, could you imagine? Let's think about that for a second. Anyways, so that's the new experiment coming out of China. It's at their space station, 5-day study. So, obviously it's a challenge for humans for long-term survival, right? I know there were Mark Kelly and his brother went to space for, I think I want to say a year. One of the brothers did, and so they measured the difference because they're identical twins between them. So that was a really interesting study about space. So we'll see about that. Speaking about space, though, and I did not know this, not being a scientist and somebody who works on, um, pharmacies and drugs and drug making, but it's very difficult on Earth to work on new formulations for new drugs. Whether it's cancer, Parkinson's, whatever. We need these drugs to help people with severe illnesses and diseases. But they find it very difficult on Earth because of gravity. Because if you have to work with a solid, the solid sinks, it's hard to mix. If it's lighter, it rises. The substances that you use are not equal. Never thought of this. English lit major attorney over here. So, of course, I didn't think about that. But they are happy and they want to go to space because space, zero gravity, everything is equal, right? So maybe they'll create drugs that will help with those kind of awful diseases like ALS and things like that and cancer. So that's interesting for space. I read all sorts of things. So, anyways, oh gosh, men. Oh, male doctors. Guess what? Yes, of course, in Hawaii, male physician used his sperm didn't get consent. Of course, they did the 23andMe and found out that the doctor and not the sperm donor is my biological parent. And guess what? Hawaii does not have. They do not have a fertility fraud law. I think there's only 14 states in the United States that has a fertility fraud law. So Dr. William McKenzie, he's since been retired. His license is still good, but it's a retired license. He got a minor fine because they cannot criminally charge him because there was no law that said he couldn't do that. Oh, I guess we didn't think because of course I was not around. I was young, so I was not around when, this was all starting. I mean, I was around, but I wasn't in this space. But didn't think that men would do this, that they would just say, "Oh, well, sperm donor isn't available. I'll use my sperm. It works." Oh my gosh, in what planet does that make sense? Apparently, for multiple men, the doctor in Indiana who has like 100+ genetic offspring. There's more. It seems like there's one month or every other month, and it's all over. It's not just the US, it's all over. Anyways, Hawaii needs a law. Everybody needs a law to prevent that. So just stop doing it. Let's get consent. Ask, use your words. That's what I used to say to my son when he was young. Use your words. So, oh gosh, and he didn't even lose his license. So, hmm. Anyways, enough of them. Let's talk about babies and IVF. Because I see this and I've seen this since my children were born that, oh, IVF babies are not as healthy. IVF babies have psychological issues more than other babies. IVF babies are this over this. Guess what? They're just the same. Yes. A new study said that they are just the same as any other child. And, really and truly, if you could ask my children, they'd say, yes, of course, we're just the same. But they did this decades research. These researchers, it was across Europe, US, Asia, so pretty much the whole entire world. And they looked at IVF conceived children and how they develop. And they said they develop normally, physically, mentally, and emotionally. So, yeah. They do have a slightly higher risk of low birth weight and preterm birth, and that's because if an older woman is carrying, she is at higher risk. I hope they stop saying geriatric pregnancy. I mean, seriously, ugh, just you know, you're just you just have different issues because of your age. Can we just say that? That's better than geriatric. Oh my gosh, every woman who's been called that, they're like, thanks, really, right? But anyways, those babies do have lower birth weight. I know mine were not high birth weight, but it was twins, so two and one, so they were getting a little squished. But they do attribute that to maternal age and multiple births. But thank God we're not having as many multiple births because mostly one embryo transfer, which is really, really good, right? And that they said has helped with the low birth weight. So IVF provides help for people who need it, and your children are just the same as any other. So, and it all just really just depends on the genetics, just like anybody else, right? So, good to know. Oh my gosh, South Korea. South Korea has one of the lowest fertility rates of any nation. I know a lot of, everybody talks about, oh, we're not having as many babies, we need babies. And it would be great if we could do something here in the US to help IVF. IVF is super expensive. We should do something like South Korea. They fund 90% of the IVF or up to 90%, but the article said 90%. So amazing. So in 2025, that boosted their live birth rate by over 30%. So become South Korean, move to South Korea. Not a bad idea, right? But anyways, that's what's happening in South Korea. I know Trump has said that he wants to be called the IVF parent. And he did, I talked about it, I think last month or the month before, he did an executive order researching more on insurance or things like that. But really and truly helping fund IVF, giving more tax credits, insurance for everybody would go a long way to helping it, not an executive order looking into providing more help. It's expensive and people need help. And South Korea, I mean, seriously, they've subsidized it's up to 90% of out-of-pocket expenses. So that has really helped them boost their pregnancy and live birth rate. So they're having more babies. And who doesn't like more babies? Oh, and they actually have more psychological and medical support. Going through IVF is tough. I mean, if you have to work with a surrogate egg donor or sperm donor, that adds even more complexity, but it is just such a grueling thing to undergo. And so to have psychological support would be fabulous too. But let's start with financial support first. So that would be wonderful. More support for all those people that need it would be amazing. Okay, it's summer. This is kind of a short one. Sometimes I have a little bit longer. But I'm going to talk about a wonderful thing. I always like to end on a high note. So 2017, 2018, I posted this onto one of my pages, Facebook, I think, and I don't even think I Instagrammed them then, but I always had Twitter. So, and I talked about this mom who had a daughter be a sperm donation, and they did a 23andMe, and her daughter wanted to find out and talk to and meet the sperm donor. And the sperm donor said, sure, okay, I'll meet. And they met, I think, in 2018, and they developed a friendship and a relationship, and he wanted to, get to know the daughter and everything, and they fell in love. And they're still together. I love that, right? So, what? They met in 2017, fell in love in 2018. So, what is that? Like 8 years they've been together? Yay! Jessica Scher and Aaron Long. Ooh, Long and Cher. Cher and Long. That's kind of funny, actually. But they fell in love and they've been together more than a decade. Okay, I can't do math again, right? He was anonymous sperm donor, but of course, with 23andMe and Ancestry.com, nobody is anonymous any longer. And so they really connected, and it was truly unexpected because who thinks you're going to fall in love with your sperm donor? And he fell in love with her. So he does have 23 other biological children. That's a lot, but people have had more. Okay, back in the day, nobody really said, "Oh, sperm is so easy to use and get, and maybe we should limit families." That's being done now, but it wasn't done then. So, anyways, yeah, they're still together and they actually got married. So love that. So that's all I have for this month. Next month, we'll be talking about the birthright citizenship case because it will have been decided by the Supreme Court. So stay tuned for that because that's a biggie in our industry. And if you have any questions, definitely reach out to me. I am always available. You can find me on the socials. And I'd love to chat. And if you have an idea, you want to see something different, just let me know. But thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. And have a great day. Talk to you later. Bye.